Something is happening right now beneath one of the most strategically critical bodies of water on the planet, and almost no major outlet is telling you the complete story. You are watching Nexa World Brief, and in the next 23 minutes, I am going to take you inside a confrontation so layered, so calculated, and so consequential that it has the potential to permanently redraw the energy and power map of the entire world. Not tomorrow. Not next year. Right now, today, as you watch this. What is unfolding in and around the Strait of Hormuz is not a routine flare-up between rival navies. It is something far more structural, far more dangerous, and if you understand what is actually happening beneath the diplomatic surface, you will never look at this region the same way again. Let us start with what the cameras are not showing you. While official channels have been focused on ceasefire language, diplomatic communiques, and back-channel negotiations being floated through intermediary nations, something very different has been taking shape along the seafloor of one of the world's most trafficked and most choked maritime corridors. The Strait of Hormuz, a narrow passage barely 40 kilometers wide at its tightest point, carries somewhere close to 1/5 of all the oil that moves across this planet on any given day. Think about what that number actually means. Every fifth barrel of oil powering factories in Germany, households in Japan, transport networks in India, and financial systems in the United States flows through this one geographical bottleneck. And right now, that bottleneck has become a trap, a game board, and a weapon all at once. The Iranian regime has been engaging in what can only be described as strategic theater. Publicly, Tehran has been presenting itself as a willing party to de-escalation, even submitting what appears to be a ceasefire framework through diplomatic back channels. The language is moderate. The posture is cooperative. But beneath that surface, literally beneath it, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has been moving assets into position with a level of precision and patience that reveals this was never really about peace talks. The IRGC has deployed a fleet of compact diesel-electric submarines into the most tactically sensitive sections of the strait, vessels designed specifically to exploit the shallow, acoustically complex environment of these waters. These are not conventional military submarines meant to fight a conventional war at sea. They are instruments of asymmetric pressure, quiet, patient, dangerous in ways that conventional military metrics struggle to quantify. Here is why the geography matters so much, and why the people running these operations understand it better than almost any Western analyst gives them credit for. The average water depth across the strait sits at roughly 36 meters. That is extraordinarily shallow by naval standards. Large nuclear-powered attack submarines, the kind that give the United States its overwhelming edge in deep-water combat, become significantly less effective in environments like this. The shallow depth creates what oceanographers call a complex acoustic environment, where thermal layers, salinity gradients, and strong bottom currents scatter and absorb sound waves in unpredictable ways. Passive sonar systems, which work by listening for mechanical noise, struggle enormously in these conditions. Small, slow-moving submarines running on battery power can reduce their acoustic signature to something approaching silence. They can settle onto the seabed, power down non-essential systems, and simply wait. This is not a metaphor. This is operational doctrine. Before a crisis fully breaks open is always the most dangerous phase, because it is the phase in which the trap is being set, and almost no one can see it happening. The vessels in question are compact enough to navigate the strait's most constricted channels, armed with torpedo systems and submarine-launched cruise missiles capable of threatening both commercial tankers and surface warships. Their value is not in what they can definitively destroy. Their value is in what they threaten. A single confirmed hostile submarine contact in a critical shipping lane does not need to fire a single weapon to cause global consequences. Insurance markets react within hours. Shipping companies reroute within days. Oil futures spike within minutes. And that is precisely the calculation being made. Geography is being used as a weapon here in ways that no missile battery or air defense network can simply neutralize. This changes the strategic equation on a structural level. Washington, however, has clearly decided that the era of watching this particular leverage mechanism operate with impunity is over. The American military response that has taken shape around the strait is not a patrol. It is a statement of intent made in steel and aviation fuel and sonar arrays stretching across hundreds of kilometers of water. At the center of the operation sits a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier and its accompanying strike group, a formation of over 20 warships that constitutes one of the most concentrated expressions of conventional military power that exists anywhere on Earth. Guided missile destroyers bristling with vertical launch cells capable of sending Tomahawk cruise missiles across vast distances or intercepting incoming threats at the edge of the atmosphere. Amphibious assault ships carrying marine units and vertical takeoff stealth fighters. Fast, shallow-draft combat vessels specifically engineered for the kind of confined, contested maritime environment that Hormuz represents. Resupply ships ensuring the entire formation can remain on station indefinitely without returning to port. This is not a show of force designed for domestic audiences. This is a blockade, and a blockade with an extremely clear set of objectives. The air picture above the strait tells its own story. Maritime patrol aircraft are conducting continuous sorties, dropping networks of sonobuoys across the water, arrays of sophisticated underwater listening devices that together form an acoustic surveillance net covering the strait from surface to seabed. Helicopters equipped with dipping sonar are methodically working the shallower coastal zones where a small submarine might try to hide under the noise signature of passing commercial traffic. Unmanned surface vessels running AI-assisted acoustic analysis are mapping the underwater environment in near real time, flagging anomalies for human review. And deeper in the water column, nuclear attack submarines, among the quietest and most lethal machines humanity has ever engineered, are conducting their own hunt. This is a silent war of systems and logistics, and it is being fought on a technological level that renders the outcome between these two forces in a direct conventional confrontation essentially predetermined. But here is the complication that no one in the mainstream conversation seems willing to fully engage with. Conventional military superiority does not automatically translate into strategic victory in an asymmetric confrontation. Iran is not trying to win a naval battle. It never was. The IRGC's maritime doctrine is built on a fundamentally different logic, not the destruction of American assets, but the sustained threat of disruption. Swarms of fast attack boats, inexpensive drone systems capable of targeting radar arrays and bridge structures, thousands of naval mines that can be laid faster than they can be cleared. These are not the tools of a navy trying to win a fight. They are the tools of a system trying to make fighting prohibitively expensive. Every day the confrontation continues. Every day commercial shipping is disrupted or rerouted. Every day oil prices carry a risk premium baked in by uncertainty. That is a form of success for the asymmetric player. The math is brutal. A fast attack boat costs a fraction of a percent of what a destroyer costs. A naval mine costs almost nothing compared to the mine clearing operation required to neutralize it. The asymmetric actor does not need to destroy anything. It needs to force the opponent to spend. And the economic pressure is running in both directions. Estimates of the revenue damage being sustained by Iran through sustained oil export disruption run to hundreds of millions of dollars per day, a figure that, for an economy already under significant external pressure, represents something close to an existential financial threat. The regime is caught between two catastrophic options: escalate and risk the kind of direct military response that would systematically dismantle the coastal and naval infrastructure that Iran has spent decades building. De-escalate genuinely and abandon the one piece of strategic leverage that has anchored its regional power for nearly half a century. There is no clean path through this, and that is exactly what makes the current moment so volatile. The global economic implications of a genuine closure or sustained disruption of the Strait of Hormuz are almost impossible to overstate. Not because the numbers are dramatic and abstract, but because the knock-on effects move through systems that most people never think about as connected. European nations that spent the last 2 years restructuring their energy supply chains after the Russia-Ukraine war would face renewed energy price volatility at precisely the moment their economies can least afford it. China, which has been quietly deepening its trade and financial relationships with Iran while simultaneously attempting to position itself as a global peacemaker in the region, would face immediate pressure on the industrial supply chains that depend on Gulf oil. India, whose rapidly expanding economy is one of the largest consumers of Gulf crude, would see cost pressures ripple across its manufacturing and transportation sectors almost immediately. And the maritime insurance market, which quietly underpins the entire global trade system, would likely freeze coverage for the region within hours of any serious escalation, effectively turning the strait into an impassable dead zone not because it is physically blocked, but because no commercial operator can afford to enter without insurance. Infrastructure in moments like this becomes more powerful than military force. The real choke point is not geographical. It is financial. This is also why what happens in the Strait of Hormuz right now sends signals that extend far beyond the Persian Gulf. Every American ally in the broader Middle East is watching this confrontation with intense attention. The Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, have built their entire national security architecture around a combination of American military guarantees and their ability to export energy through open sea lanes. If Washington successfully breaks Iran's ability to use the strait as a bargaining tool, those relationships are reinforced in ways that reshape the region's political geometry for a generation. If the confrontation drags on inconclusively, or if Iran manages to score even a symbolic asymmetric success, the calculus changes dramatically. Nations that have been quietly hedging their strategic bets between Washington and Beijing will read the signal and adjust accordingly. This is a permanent shift in global power balance being played out in real time, measured not in territory captured, but in credibility established or eroded. Israel, meanwhile, remains in a posture of acute alert. Any significant escalation in the strait creates conditions in which Iran might be tempted, or might feel compelled, to activate proxy networks elsewhere in the region, either to disperse American attention and resources or to create bargaining chips for a negotiated exit. The interlocking nature of these regional pressure points means that a miscalculation in the strait does not stay in the strait. It propagates through the entire regional system with a speed and unpredictability that no war game fully captures. And then there is Russia. Moscow has spent the past several years cultivating a strategic relationship with Tehran that goes well beyond rhetoric. Iranian drone technology has appeared in Ukrainian skies. Russian and Iranian officials have held meetings that, whatever their formal agenda, clearly include discussion of how to coordinate pressure on Western strategic interests across multiple theaters simultaneously. A prolonged American military commitment in the Persian Gulf drains resources and attention from the Indo-Pacific, where China is watching the U.S. Navy's force posture with the closest possible attention. Every carrier strike group deployed to Hormuz is a carrier strike group not available for operations in the South China Sea or the Taiwan Strait. These are not separate crises. They are a connected system of pressure points, and the actors applying that pressure understand the geometry of the system better than many Western policymakers seem to. What you are watching right now, and I want to be very precise about this, is not the kind of regional standoff that gets managed down through back-channel diplomacy and mutual face-saving gestures over the course of a few weeks. The structural stakes are too high on both sides. Iran cannot afford to be seen as having been forced to permanently surrender its most powerful strategic deterrent. Washington cannot afford to be seen as having been successfully stalled yet again by the same tactical playbook it has watched play out for decades. The language of both sides suggests awareness of this. And that awareness, paradoxically, makes the situation more dangerous, not less, because it narrows the space for the kind of ambiguous, face-saving de-escalation that has historically allowed these confrontations to cool without tipping into something irreversible. The phase we are in right now, the hidden positioning phase, the layered pressure phase, the phase before any single decisive action forces a new reality, is historically the phase in which accidents happen. A misidentified contact, a miscommunicated order, a system behaving in a way its operators did not anticipate. Before collapse is always the most dangerous phase, and we are living inside it. The world's most critical energy corridor has become a high-tension system in which every variable is being managed simultaneously by human beings operating under enormous pressure, incomplete information, and the knowledge that a single wrong decision could set off a chain of events that no one has a script for. The deeper question, the one that the official briefings and the diplomatic communiques carefully avoid, is whether this confrontation represents a genuine inflection point or another iteration of a pattern that has repeated itself with minor variations for going on 5 decades. Iran threatens the strait. Washington sends naval assets. Negotiations proceed. The crisis de-escalates. The leverage is preserved for the next cycle. If that pattern breaks, if Washington decides that the asymmetric deterrence architecture Iran has built must be dismantled rather than merely contained, then what follows is not a crisis. It is a restructuring. The military infrastructure along Iran's coastline, the naval facilities, the coastal missile batteries, the submarine shelters, these represent decades of investment and strategic calculation. Their removal would not just be a military setback, it would be the end of a strategic posture. And the region that exists on the other side of that event would look fundamentally different from anything we have seen in the modern era. But that outcome, if it comes, does not come cleanly. It comes with oil prices the world has not seen in decades. It comes with supply chain shocks that reach every continent. It comes with geopolitical aftershocks that will be felt in Beijing, Moscow, Brussels, and New Delhi simultaneously. And it comes with the certainty that the actors who survive it, whoever they are, will be operating in a world where the rules of the old order no longer apply in the ways they once did. That is what a permanent shift in global power balance actually looks like from the inside. Not dramatic in a single moment, irreversible in its accumulated weight. So here's what I want you to think about as we reach the end of this analysis, and I genuinely want to know your perspective in the comments below. We are standing at a moment where every option carries a cost that no one wants to pay, where the geography of one narrow waterway is holding the global energy economy hostage, and where the decisions being made by a small number of people in Washington, Tehran, and several capitals in between will shape the strategic landscape of the next generation. The underwater chess match continues. The acoustic nets are listening. The submarines are waiting. And the clock, economic, military, and political, is running on every side simultaneously. The question is not whether something breaks. The question is what breaks first and who is positioned to benefit from the fracture. Do you believe Washington has the sustained political will to see this through to a genuine structural resolution? Or will the familiar pressure to de-escalate reassert itself before anything permanently changes? Tell me what you think. Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if this analysis gave you something the mainstream coverage missed, share it with someone who needs to understand what is actually happening. This is Nexa World Brief. Stay informed because right now, information is the most valuable thing on the map.